In the news this week, back in her parents' arms, Cleo Smith home safe and sound as her alleged abductor is taken to Perth to face justice.
Also tonight, an abduction victim calls for harsher sentencing for future convicted kidnappers. A WAMN News exclusive. And a psychologist weighs in on what the long road to recovery will look like for Cleo Smith and her family. Plus, Dr. Andrew Miller's COVID comment.
This is The Evening News with Ivan Leung and Sarah Smith.
Good evening and welcome to a special edition of WAMN News. It's the good news many Western Australians and people worldwide have been hoping and praying for. Missing 4-year-old girl Cleo Smith found alive and well following a successful police rescue. But the situation is far from over as Cleo's alleged abductor arrives at Casuarina Prison to be remanded until justice can be done. Reporter Melissa Thorne joins us tonight with the latest details. Melly, although it's a huge relief, as one chapter closes, another chapter begins.
Yes, Ivan and Sarah, after more than 2 weeks' worth of dreadful tears, twists and turns, joy has finally been brought to Western Australians and across the world, with news of little Cleo Smith's successful rescue and apprehension of her alleged abductor. At around 1 a.m. on Wednesday morning, police raided a 36-year-old man's house in Carnarvon. In a room in the house, officers found Cleo.
We got her. I've got her. Hey, Bobby.
Bring the camera in.
Hey, Bobby, come here. Come here. I've got you, Bobby.
What's your name?
You're alright.
What's your name? What's your name, sweetheart?
My name is Cleo.
Your name is
You're alright,
Cleo.
Bobby.
Hello, Cleo.
The Western Australian Police Force rescued Cleo Smith. Cleo is alive and well. A police team broke their way into a locked house in Carnarvon at about 1 a.m. They found little Cleo in one of those rooms.
The 36-year-old man, Terence Darrell Kelly, has been arrested and charged by police with various offences. It's understood that he will be taken to Perth by police as standard procedures.
That's a normal process. When a person is remanded in custody, the person who has been charged over the situation has been remanded in custody for 4 weeks, and he will be transferred to a facility with corrective services. A person in that situation would not remain in Carnarvon anyway, so the normal process will take place. We'll put extra security measures for obvious reasons.
Following the successful result, WA Premier Mark McGowan flew up to Carnarvon to visit the officers and Cleo Smith's family, giving Cleo 2 police teddy bear gifts named Rod and Cameron. They were named after Police Superintendent Rod Wild and Sergeant Cameron Blaine. Mr McGowan described Cleo Smith as a bright and upbeat little girl.
It was a very uplifting experience. I really liked the police officers. They were great people. The Commissioner ushered me into a room and there was about 60 men and women standing there in suits. Very foreboding looking group of people that he invited me to speak to. But they were determined and committed, and they did a wonderful job. And everyone I spoke to was nice and knockabout, but had a sort of an underlying professionalism you could feel. When I went to the house and I met Cleo and her family, they were just lovely, kind people. They were positive. They were positive, and they were happy. Their daughter had been brought home. And she was a happy little girl, and that was lovely.
However, Perth psychologist Lynn Tan said that Cleo's true state of mind would only be revealed by time, as police will conduct their interviews with Cleo very carefully.
We can see that Cleo is looking really happy and a sense of relief on her face as well, which is a good sign. But I'm sure there might be a lot of mixed emotions, so in the next few days will be very critical. I guess, that might actually inform, where she's at with her current mental health status.
The family has released a statement saying they are humbled by the love and support from the local community and across the country. We would like to take this opportunity to thank all those involved in the rescue of our daughter Cleo Smith. In particular, we would like to thank WA Police, all those involved in the initial search, the Carnarvon community, local businesses, and of course our family and friends. We are so thankful that our little girl is back within our arms and our family is whole again. As we try to get on with our lives, we ask that you respect our privacy. Although the nation and people around the world are rejoicing over this big miracle, the Cleo Smith matter is far from concluded, as the alleged abductor is set to go through the long and winding process of the West Australian justice system. He will appear in court again on the 6th of December. We will bring you the latest as it unfolds. There are now calls for the McGowan government to introduce tougher penalties for abduction. And with more about that exclusive story, Ivan, over to you to continue the coverage.
What an extraordinary week it has been. Melly, thank you. A woman who was abducted and sexually assaulted 54 years ago is demanding the McGowan government introduce tougher penalties for future convicted abductors. Susie Gilmore wants the jail term raised from a maximum of 20 years to life behind bars with no chance of parole, calling on Premier Mark McGowan to toughen up and introduce the penalties via legislation. I spoke with Susie in this exclusive interview. Susie, it's been a very long time, but it's good to see you again.
Likewise.
That's right. Back in 1967, you were 15 years old.
Yes.
Are you able to tell the viewers very briefly what happened to you before we go into the main topic?
I was walking home with a friend. We'd been to a local milk bar, walked across our local railway yard, split up at the corner, so I would have much the same distance to walk as she would. Car stopped beside me, asked for directions. I was in the boot and gone. She heard me scream, but of course came running back and there was nothing there. And this is a little bit like Cleo. Suddenly her mum wakes up and her child's not there. And when you wake up and suddenly you realise that your child's not there, you really become numb because you don't know where to go first. Do you search the place where you are? Do you call the police first? Or what do? There's this dreadful shock. And I know my parents, when I hadn't turned up in the morning, they just were stunned because I was a kid that always was home at night. I wouldn't have dared not be. But when they reported it to the police, they said, oh, we have to wait 24 hours to do the missing persons report, which was the protocol back then. But by then, I was 300 k's away, the other side of Perth. But there was no clue. Well, they just basically used me as a sexual toy. Whenever, however, whenever they wanted. And it just came to pass that after a period of time, the plan was then to shoot me and bury the body and bolt for the eastern states. But one of them wouldn't be party to murder. So on the last day we were at a house and he just said to me, follow me to the bathroom, the back door is open, run and don't look back. And that's exactly what I did. And the sad thing is that this was a person who'd saved my life. No matter what he'd done, he'd saved my life. But he got 23 years and no chance of parole. The other two, who were equally as guilty, 9 and 5 years. So where is the standard here? Why weren't all three given the same sentence?
And you were lucky to be alive.
I was, exactly. They had a rifle. They had every opportunity to shoot me if they wanted to.
It took you
40 years of...
To come forward.
To come forward and also to realise that there was something desperately wrong, that it's not normal for somebody to want to crawl under the bed and hide for a week and not want to shower and not want to eat and not want to talk to anybody, but then on another day be absolutely fine and making a cup of coffee for a friend. And this dreadful seesaw, until I spoke to a doctor one day and she just said to me, you've got PTSD.
So what are you calling for when it comes to the penalties of abduction?
Life.
Life.
Yep, no excuses, no second chance here, you're done. This person needs to be behind bars for the rest of his or her natural life, because that family's been given a life sentence, just the same as I was, and it's not fair.
What will you be telling your local member?
I'll say to him, look, seriously, you need to get some support behind you and push for tougher sentences. You know, you don't need to be taking the cotton wool approach, if you like. Stand up and be counted. Somebody has to have a voice for these people. And If our local members get behind it, then maybe we can get it to Parliament and maybe get a bill moved that can change the laws to make tougher sentences. And that's what needs to happen.
What's your call to the McGowan government?
Mr McGowan has done an absolutely fantastic job of keeping WA safe, but now he needs to stand up and say, well, hang on a minute, this little girl has been found alive. What are we going to do with the person or persons that abducted her? Are we going to let them walk away with a soft touch, or are we going to toughen up and play hardball here? It's time to play hardball.
Susie, I know that you've been very brave to talk about this again. It's good to see you in Bunbury again. And,
it is indeed.
And as always, I wish you all the best.
You too.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Every weekend.
We begin with a story you will only see here.
In news still unfolding,
Ivan Loong, Sarah Smith, and the award-winning WAMN team bring you the exclusive stories and interviews that set the agenda.
I watched live on WAM News.
Plus, Dr. Andrew Miller's expert medical comment.
We don't want to see large numbers of children admitted to hospital because it's going to put enormous pressure.
Sunday evening news and WP, every Sunday night after 6:30 on WAMN News, Perth's alternative voice.
and coming up on Western Perspective later this broadcast, a psychologist weighs in on the long road to recovery for Cleo Smith and her family. The Western Australian government has announced a new safe transition plan to open borders when WA reaches 90% double-dose vaccination rate. Expected to be between late January and early February 2022, the plan will involve face masks, proof of double vaccination and the Safe WA app when border restrictions ease. Helene Fung reports.
The state government's Safe Transition Plan seeks to minimise the impact of COVID's arrival in WA when borders open and aims to combine high levels of vaccination with no community spread. An 80% double dose rate is expected to be reached in December, leading to a specific date for transition then being locked in. The required 90% double dose vaccination rate will lead to the plan being implemented in late January or early February. The Premier stated that if borders are opened at 90% rather than 80% double vaccination rates, there would be 70% less general ward beds occupied, 75% less ICU beds occupied, and 65% less deaths. At the point of transition, face masks will be essential at high-risk indoor settings, such as on public transport, hospitals, and aged care centres. Proof of vaccination will also be needed to attend nightclubs. The Safe WA app will still be required, and access to remote Aboriginal communities will be restricted where necessary. Furthermore, safeguards such as greater use of face masks, venue capacity limits, and rapid testing at workplaces could be implemented if required by health advice. Arrivals from both interstate and overseas will need to be double vaccinated, and overseas arrivals not double dosed will need to complete 2 weeks quarantine. Helene Fong, WAMN News.
A man has died after a shark attack in Fremantle this weekend. It happened on Saturday morning at around 10 a.m. Authorities were alerted by beachgoers that a 57-year-old father has been taken by the shark at Port Beach. Local police and surf lifesavers have been searching the surrounding areas trying to locate the victim, as Leighton and Cottesloe Beach remain closed to the public. WA Police says the victim's family is being supported as local residents and beachgoers went into the area to pay their respects.
Mam's family, as far as we know, is holding up well. We've got officers speaking with the family regularly, and they're kept updated in relation to what's happening.
That's shocking. I mean, some families lost most probably father, husband, and it's very sad. So let's just pray and hope that he's found all right, but it's sad.
Controversial broadcaster Alan Jones has had his final primetime commentary show this week after his contract with Sky News Australia was not renewed. The colourful radio and television broadcaster declined a weekly slot at the new news streaming service Flash. In a lengthy statement on social media, Mr Jones attacked claims that his work didn't resonate with Australian audiences, saying only fellow Sky commentator Andrew Bolt was more searched on Google. This comes after his column in the Sydney Morning Herald was dropped back in July. Mr Jones has been a strong critic of COVID-19 measures and lockdown policies during the pandemic.
WA Health Department has sent out a document to emergency department coordinators at Royal Perth Hospital on how to manage bed closures in emergency departments as the state's public hospital system is plagued by staff shortage and ambulance ramming crisis. On Friday, 5th of November, a document from the East Metropolitan Health Service released a decision-making framework on closing beds in the emergency department after all avenues have been explored for staffing, with the approval by the Executive Director via Hospital Logistic Coordinator. In the document, ED coordinators have been urged to please use your clinical judgment and be flexible with staff allocations. Deputy Liberal leader and health spokeswoman Libby Metham says a policy appears to have been developed responding to WA's extraordinary challenge in public health.
It's very distressing to hear the direct feedback from health workers regarding this document. It is distressing to understand that we are a state with a $5.8 billion surplus. We have had over 20 months without any or very little COVID in the community, and our hospital system is being put under this extraordinary pressure.
A new Department of Transport report has found that only 20% of Perth kids walk or ride to school, despite more than half wanting to. The report has sparked a new state government program. The Your Move program engages over 170 schools in 750 activities to encourage walking and riding to school. The report found driving to school costs the Perth economy over $186 million every year, and said poor pedestrian accessibility, traffic and safety concerns, large distances between home and school, and parent time constraints were major factors in the low rates.
A cyber safety educator, a senior charity organisation president, a young person fighting the stigma of mental health, and the founder of a group giving free haircuts to homeless have been named Western Australian of the Year. The 2022 awards were announced this week, acknowledging people who have served the WA community. Kendall White has been awarded WA Young Australian of the Year while breaking down the stigma of mental health. She is hoping to bridge service gaps and demands to prevent self-harm.
There's a lot that we have to do in that space. I think a lot more work into safe havens and sort of these wellbeing hubs where people can present and divert them from going to the emergency departments and the hospitals where they're not getting the right help that they do need.
Cyber safety educator and campaigner Paul Litherland was awarded WA Australian of the Year. Meanwhile, President of Grandparents Rearing Grandchildren WA, Jenna Standen, has been awarded WA Senior Australian of the Year. And the founder and CEO of Shortback Sidewalks, Craig Hollywood, has been awarded WA's Local Hero Award. As you can see, Sarah, very inspirational indeed.
Absolutely. Congratulations to all of the winners. We'll recap this week's top stories again in just a moment.
But now our coverage of Cleo Smith's successful rescue continues, and here's Nelson with Western Perspective. Nelson, good evening.
Thanks, Ivan and Sarah. Hello and welcome to WP. The alleged abduction of Cleo Smith has drawn the attention and concern of people at home and abroad as WA police search to find her after she disappeared from a northern WA campsite. The 4-year-old was rescued after an 18-day search, but despite Cleo being in good spirits, concerns remain about her mental health following the ordeal. I spoke to psychologist Lynn Tan about the mental impact of Cleo and her family, as well as people following the incident. There are reports that Cleo appears in good spirits at the moment. What are the challenges for both Cleo and her family?
For Cleo personally, I think for her is to really unpack the emotions of what happened to her in the past, few weeks, and also when she's ready to disclose that information to people around her, just to go through, that experience again, the overwhelming support and also the responses from the community too. I'm sure, this will be fairly overwhelming for someone as young as Cleo. As for the parents, they have just experienced, not having Cleo around, that sense of loss as well, and suddenly regain Cleo. This must be a lot of mixed emotion involved, dealing with that guilt. I'm sure that must be quite challenging for parents to go through.
What do you think her state of mind will be at the moment, and what do you think it will be in the upcoming days?
Well, in the next few days, I guess, when things settles a bit, I'm sure we're going to see a lot of emotions as well. So that really depends on what has exactly happened to Cleo. I guess, in the next few days, next 2 weeks, going to be quite critical for us to really understand where is she at, mental health-wise.
It's been a mental and emotional rollercoaster ride for the public whose thoughts are still with the family. There's relief, but it's going to be hard to stop thinking about the incident and the family. How's it going to be for people, given it's been 2 weeks, thinking about Cleo's safety?
People do experience anxiety because of this news, obviously very close to home, particularly for parents and for those who've been through something like that in the past. I suppose though, right now, the best thing to do is also to take a step back, maybe to spend a bit of time to allow us to process on those emotions. It is certainly a good news, but also allow the body to also catch up with what has happened, work on the anxiety as well, because that might actually tells you, all right, does that mean that there are some, worriness about the future that is affecting your current mental health, or does it suggest that there might be some unfinished or unresolved issues in the past that needs a little bit more work, with professional?
And finally, how does Cleo's family move forward from here?
I reckon at this stage though, family and friend support are very, very critical, are very important as well, because they really miss out. I'm sure you see the reunion between Cleo and her parents, that means something a lot to them. In terms of what other support as well, that depends on the assessment too. Cleo might need to go through maybe some physical, mental health assessment. I'm guessing that, the opportunity for her to speak with other professionals, maybe like doctors, counsellor, that might be useful for her and also for the family.
And now, here's AMA WA spokesperson Dr. Andrew Miller with this week's COVID-19 update and commentary.
Hi, thanks for your time. Obviously been a very important week in the pandemic for Western Australia, with the news that we are moving towards a reopening in early 2022. On face value, it seems as though this will be a very reasonable approach. It's based on getting to 90% of over 12-year-olds being vaccinated, or more technically, it's based on projecting when that might happen once we get to 80% of that population. Clearly, this is a more sensible approach than allowing disease into the community, as has happened in New South Wales, and then Victoria, of course, got mugged by what had happened in New South Wales and have had to go along with that. But in Western Australia, we have the opportunity to slowly bring the plane into land at the appropriate point and then deal with what life looks like once we have COVID being allowed even in small amounts into our community, which is more restriction, of course, than we've faced to date. So I think in terms of protecting people, first and foremost, protecting hospitals, very importantly, because if you lock down the community, it's usually because your hospitals are failing. And also having time to get our vaccination rates high enough that we shouldn't hopefully see any big burden of disease. And with the news in America that they're now vaccinating the 5 to 11-year-old age group, hopefully that'll be another big cohort that we can get to who do spread disease, who spread it in schools, and although it's less likely that they will die and suffer long-term consequences than in older people, it's not impossible, and nobody wants to see any 5-year-old child struggling to breathe in hospital. So hopefully we'll see that vaccine come online soon, and indeed even for younger ones than that. And with them vaccinated, that really does give us a very good chance of getting 90% plus of the whole population vaccinated, which gives this disease a lot less options. Remember, if you reduce the number of unvaccinated people from 20% down to 10%, doesn't matter what age they are, then you've halved the chance of the virus spreading around. So I think it's a sensible approach. I think there'll be resistance from some people who'd like to see it open up earlier, and that's misguided. If you look at what's happening in Europe at the moment, they're heading back towards lockdown in a lot of places, and they've been living with quite severe restrictions, the like of which Western Australia has not had to tolerate at all. So going forward, we'll need to get used to the idea that vaccinations are a 3-dose. We do need that 3rd dose. Very important when it's 6 months since your last dose of vaccine that you get that 3rd one. That really is the one that finishes and polishes and seals off the immunity that you need for a while. And it is much better than just having the 2 doses. And we'll also need to get used to wearing masks when we're in crowded places, having thoughts about ventilation, thinking about, am I getting clean air in the places that I'm going to? And that's the reason why we need to be using things like crowd limits and so on within restaurants if we can't keep carbon dioxide less than 800 parts per million. Easy enough to measure, but we've just got to get on with doing the work that's involved. The government can't do everything. A lot of this is up to the population. So stay safe, get that 3rd dose vaccine, contact your MPs, say to them if you have primary school age kids, I expect that they're going to get the same benefit as all the kids in the US are getting. I want them to be protected from this disease. And also plan for a future where you think just as much about clean air and you avoid dirty air just as much as you avoid drinking dirty water. We've taken clean water for granted for a long time. We have to start thinking about the air that we breathe, particularly when we're indoors. Thanks for your time.
That was Dr. Andrew Miller, and that's all for WP this week. We'll be back again next time, but for now, it's back to you, Ivan and Sarah.
Thank you, Nelson. And here's Leo with what's coming up on 6 News tonight.
Thanks, guys. And on 6 News, breaking news, Europe facing a deadly resurgence of COVID-19 with cases reaching near record highs and hospitalisations doubling. We'll explain why this is happening amid fears 500,000 people could die in the next 3 months. Plus, almost 1 child a week fined for breaching rules about face masks in Victoria, according to new reports. But are kids as young as 10 really being forced to pay up? We'll be fact-checking those claims as authorities have their say. And new details tonight about Cleo Smith's alleged abductor are revealed as the world reacts to the 4-year-old amazingly being found alive after being missing for over 2 weeks. You can see full details on those stories and plenty more by going to our YouTube channel. Just search 6 News Australia to find us, or our website 6newsau.com. For now though, guys, it's back to you.
Thanks, Leo. And that's our weekly news and current affairs on the week that Cleo was rescued. We have the latest at any time on our website, wamnnews.com.au.
It's such a relief for both of us, isn't it? From Sarah and myself, we wish you good health, good night. See you next Sunday.
Thanks for stopping by.